curious how this works because I'm going to start doing it. My publisher wants me to set up a YouTube channel.
As you should.
And we're going to do the characters out of my novel. I'm recruiting people to play the parts and be interviewed by somebody as the characters in the book.
Fist away.
1, 2.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, no, and if you need to pull it in or push it out, as long as we're kind of like about right here, we'll be good to go. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody should definitely grow their footprint on social media for sure. The YouTube channel is still the place where I think everybody goes to find out about something or someone first.
Yeah.
And if you have a YouTube channel, somebody types in your name, just in Google, that's typically the first thing that comes up because it's where all the traffic usually is. So, yeah. I mean, to answer your question, I got started in this kind of on a lark, to be honest with you. I own Manistee Beverage Company.
Right.
And when we first opened the store, like with any kind of marketing, I was just putting some stuff up on Facebook, doing quick videos. Hey, this is like the gear up to opening when the place was empty.
Oh, okay.
Doing some videos like, hey, this is what it's going to be. And then slowly starting doing more and more video marketing of the company. And then I had an idea. I told my wife, I said, I think it'd be really interesting if I took some time and sat down with local business owners and videoed it, asked them questions, how you got started, what drove you to open up this particular business, what do you like, what do you don't like, celebrating their wins, very interested in their losses too and their growth in business. So I always had this I want to talk to entrepreneurs. I want to learn from them.
Okay.
And that's how it started. And it was just, I had a real small table, no microphones, no nothing. And just started that way, and it's slowly kind of grown into this, and it's continuing to grow. I mean, every now and then I'll inject a little more cash into the podcast, buy better equipment, stuff like that to make it better. But I find that really my interest is in meeting and learning from interesting people. And it's grown from just talking to entrepreneurs and stuff like that to just anybody who interests me is who I want to talk to.
Sure.
And this episode is brought to you by the Ramsdale Regional Center for the Arts. You can find them online at www.ramsdaletheater.org, or you can reach them by phone at 231-398-9770. So check the website for the ticketing information. That's www.ramsdaletheater.org. Also, real quick, the good people over at the Ramsdale Regional Center for the Arts want me to remind you that they're doing a Patsy Cline tribute called Remembering Patsy Cline on May 24th. So get tickets now at ramsdaletheater.org. Blue Bayou. I think she sung Blue Bayou, right? Patsy Cline, Blue Bayou. Check it out. ramsdaletheater.org. This episode is brought to you by Brandon Ball, broker-owner of Dwelling Realty, Keller Williams, Northern Michigan. Are you looking to sell your home? Then look no further. When you list your home with Brandon Ball, you'll get a trusted advisor who will guide you through the entire selling process. With extensive knowledge of the local market, he'll help price your home competitively to attract the right buyers. And with proven marketed strategies, your home will be seen by the most qualified of buyers. With 17 years in the business, you'll have someone experienced who's on your side. Contact Brandon today to get started selling your home. 231-690-4981. That's 231-690-4981. Or Brandon at dwellingrealty.com. This episode is brought to you by The Outsider of Manistee. We're showcasing their family tavern, their beer garden, and their arcade. Their large outdoor patio. This place is really awesome. It's very focused on family, getting people outside, getting them to tour the city of Manistee, showcasing our social district with their newly added indoor bar, which is awesome. They have 6 drafts, over 100 canned beers and canned cocktails to choose from on the menu. This is a really awesome place for the family. You got to mess the kids, fill their pockets full of quarters, let them have at those pinball machines, mom, dad. enjoy a nice cold draft beer or a canned cocktail. Get yourself something to eat, feed the family, feed the kids, wake up that liver a little bit, and then go enjoy downtown Manistee. These guys are located at 457 River Street. You can find them on outsidermanistee.com. Call them at 231-299-1235 or order for pickup and delivery at orderoutsider.com. Check this place out. You won't regret it. I don't do a whole lot of... I'll have some people that'll reach out and say, hey, I'd like to be on the podcast or whatever, but for the most part, I just ask, do you want to come on? Because I'd love to talk to you. And sometimes people are like, I don't know if I want to do that, and that's fine. I get it, because I don't do a whole lot of editing. I find a good place to start the video and a good place to end it and just put it out there.
Okay.
So, when you had reached out to me because of Tate being on the
Right.
the podcast, and I am horrible at I do my best. I try to do 6 of these a month, and I'm horrible at scheduling. So
Everybody is.
I'm glad we were able to kind of link this up, because just before I got your email and your bio and your background and everything, I ran into Tate before we finally locked down a date for this, and said, I've been trying to get a hold of Joe and get this set up. And he goes, oh, man, you're going to love him. He's like, the guy has had so much going on in his life. The book is just one piece of it. It's the newest piece of it.
Yeah.
But he's got a great background. And Tate kind of broke down like how he met you and how long he's known you and everything. And I said, well, and that day I said, well, we're going to lock down a date today. So, and then I got a bunch of notes based on everything that you had sent me. If you want to just kind of give a brief overview, kind of based on your bio, and I'll pick away at it as we go.
Yeah.
Now, who you are, where it started, and how you got to this place.
Well, the bio in my novel starts out, I'm a baby boomer born in 46 down in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Lived there till I went in the military, but in high school and college, helped found a true-to-form garage band, 60s garage band. And we were one of the first down there to record our own records. We did them up at Fenton Records. I believe it was in Sparta, Michigan, in an old theater. And we'd record our best songs that people liked. We played all around Michigan, fraternity parties and everything. And had really good success.
And the band was called Quest?
The Quests.
The Quests.
Don't know. Well, kind of know how that name came up. When we first started it, Bob Fritzen was our lead singer, and I started it. And we were going to play a coffee house in downtown Grand Rapids. And we walked in to say, we'd like to play for you. And the lady said, well, what's the name of your band? We looked at each other, and he was a Johnny Quest fan.
Okay.
So the Quest came up, okay? And when we first played it, we knew 3 songs. Our bass player had just bought his guitar, didn't know how to play it. We had him hooked up, but it wasn't turned on. And our drummer could hardly play, but we played the whole night 3 songs. And then as we became real popular and a couple of our records got up into the top 10, we'd go back and play the coffee house for free and pack it out for them.
Now, you had 3 albums hit the top 10, you said?
We had 3
songs?
records.
3 records?
Yeah.
No shit.
First one was Scream Loud, then Shadows in the Night, and then I'm Tempted, which I'm Tempted got thrown off because of complaints from parents. It was too suggestive for the time. You'd have to hear the song.
Yeah.
So we had those. We opened for different big time people like Lou Christie and stuff that would come to the Grand Rapids area. We would be the opening band for them. So it was quite an experience. And then Vietnam came along. 2 of us ended up going into the service. It's quite an eclectic group. We ended up with one, our lead guitarist was a dentist. Our lead singer was a psychologist. I was an entrepreneur for my own business. Our drummer was an entrepreneur. Our bass player was a professor in college teaching biology. So we came out of the 60s and eventually went in quite diverse directions. So it's, and then I went in the military, found out in basic training I qualified to go to officers candidate school. I did that, came out as a second lieutenant, went to Vietnam. I spent 2 years there. I extended 2 6-month tours. Unusual assignment. I was in what was called the Military Advisory Command. And if you were to look at a map of Vietnam, go as far south as you can. I lived in a little village called Bac Lu with about 20, 30 other Americans. And our job was to go on operations with the regular Vietnamese army against Viet Cong. And so I lived in that village for 2 years. It was quite an experience.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Yeah. Came back as a captain, spent another year and a half in the military, and then got out and went into medical sales, eventually formed my wife and I in 87 formed a consulting firm. And what I did was I would go around and teach medical clinics how to comply with OSHA requirements, which was new to them. And then when HIPAA privacy and computer security came out, I did that. And over the 35 years we had the business, we grew it to where we worked with about 1,600 independent medical clinics all around the country. And I used to travel 4 or 5 days a week for like 25, 30 of the years. The business still runs. We sold it to the employees. Moved up here. I got involved in writing and released a book of poems I wrote, and eventually got into my novels.
Yeah, we're here to talk about your novel. This is Verses. For those of you that are watching at home, this is your...
That's Verse, which is a collection of free verse poems, which started me in writing, that I wrote when I was going through counseling for depression, headed towards retirement.
Is it because where do you derive your depression from? Because of retirement, going into retirement?
Sort of. My counselor said I had the perfect storm. We were going to sell our business after 35 years. We were going to sell our 25-year-old 12-acre nice home, downsize to a condo and live in a city. I was talking about going into retirement, and it was, what the hell am I going to do now that all this is happening? And just got depressed. So my counselor got me into doing journaling, just every day writing down what my thoughts were and what I was going through, and then we'd talk about them. And then she suggested writing poems about them. And the very first poem I wrote was called Storms, and that actually became the origin of my novel Collective Vengeance, which is coming out. So the free verse became a way I could express myself, deal with my feelings, get in touch with what was going on, and it's pretty well helped me cope with depression. I don't think you ever get over it, but I'm able to deal with it, and writing is not something I intended to do. But I was looking for something to do in retirement, so, and then about, 5.5 years ago, I began studying how to write, came up with a rough outline to the Collective Vengeance novel, began traveling to New York. I did about 5-6 trips there because that's where the story takes place, so that I could write about the Soho district, Harlem, all the different locations where my characters lived and worked in and around Central Park. So it was an interesting evolution. And then took about a year off of writing when we first moved here because we bought a home, fully renovated it, and then got back into writing, and last year got serious about publishing it. So it's getting there.
Yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested in the evolution of the book. I mean, verse is one thing, but a novel is another.
Yes.
And how did you come? So I was in preparation for this talk and trying to come up with some questions. Reviewing your bio. I remembered walking down a hallway in college, and there was the creative writing teacher's office, and I just kind of peeked in. For some reason, this stuck in my head, but she had a board up and a web and it was like her beginning stages of writing, whatever it was, whether it was a book or if it was an essay, but it had the plot, like a plot line, and then lines spidering off of it with characters and
sure,
where this is going to go and where this is going to go. And I'm like, does everybody write like that? Like, what is walk me through how you came up with, number one, the idea for the book, and then character development, which I'm really interested in, because I've just been reading what you sent me. The characters sound really interesting. I'm looking forward to reading the book.
Yes. You'll end up with a copy of it. So when I was studying writing, I read a lot of books on it, and character development, dialogue, but what I write today is really founded on the work I used to do in my consulting business. What I was noted around the country for when I was traveling all over was speaking in front of hundreds of people at a time and taking complex regulations and explaining them so that they could understand them. And I was always, does that make sense? I explain this. Does that make sense to you? And then I was really good at interacting with my audiences because I would walk around the room and get close to people when they were asking questions, feed them back their question, and then say, okay, let me answer it this way so that everybody understood. And my novel, Collective Vengeance, is written that way. So I'm giving you some of the background getting into it. One of the people that really inspired me is James Patterson. About 3-4 years ago, my daughter gave me a gift subscription to an online service called Masterclass, where famous people teach a series of classes on what they do. And I took classes by David Balducci, Dan Brown. Patterson became my favorite because his was like what we're doing here. He's just sitting at a table in a restaurant and talking with you, and it's like, I could have a beer with this guy.
Yeah.
And he didn't talk in formal literature structure, okay? The way I write is I develop an idea and I begin to create an outline. And for example, my chapters are short. They're called potato chip chapters I read about. And that's a potato chip chapter, and Patterson writes this way. He says a chapter should be 350 to 500 words and leave the person so that they could turn the page and say, I'm tired, but hey, this next chapter is only a couple more pages.
Yeah.
I'll read one or two more.
I like it.
So I developed on his style. The characters, they become good friends of mine. I developed my impression of them, and then I used a personality testing program called Myers-Briggs.
Okay.
To define what their characteristics were. Then I established when they were born, and I would do astrology research. So if they're a Capricorn, like I am, a couple of them are, I'd use all the characteristics, good and bad, out of a Capricorn or a Scorpio or a Pisces, and I'd blend that with the Myers-Briggs, and then I would sit down and write interviews with them.
Okay.
And I think my wife thought I was crazy sometimes, because she'd walk in and I'd be talking to my character at my desk and making notes. But over the time, it really helped me take these characters and I could fit them into the story. And part of the development of the story, the plot, when I was writing it, came up with the idea. There was a Supreme Court justice who was going through a lot of accusations similar to what was in my book, and it was like, oh my God, this is what my book is about. And I researched political organizations and kind of kept blending it together. And the way I write leading up to all this is I treat my chapters as part of a weekly episode, as if you were watching a weekly series on TV, and I'll have 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters comprise an episode. And when I first begin a book, I'm doing that with the other 2 right now that are coming up, I write groups of chapters in these episodes, and then I look at where can I move them around, what's the order that they play into it, and begin to link them together. And as I write, when I write the outline, it's pretty significant, okay? I get it to the point to where all I have to do is fill in the dialogue and polish it up, and then I begin linking them together. So it's become an interesting process. From a writer's standpoint, I'm what's called a planner.
Okay.
I have to have a plan. I've got to know where I'm going. There's another form of writer, it's called a pantser, but it's somebody who just sits down and writes with no plan. They just let it happen. I'm the kind of person I can't function like that.
Yeah, I'm a planner.
Yeah, it helps.
Sure. Yeah. So when you're writing out your outline, or you're trying to figure out like how this book is going to play out and where it's going to play out, why did you make the decision for it to be based in New York and not something you're more familiar with, like Michigan?
I picked New York because the connection has to tie to D.C., and a lot of people out of D.C. travel back and forth from New York. New York gave it a broader landscape than trying to put it in Michigan. And I thought about that at one time, and I just couldn't get it to fit the perspective of the Supreme Court, involvement in Congress, and political organizations. But I could isolate it up in New York, people working from there, working on the D.C. connection. So I left it there. I am working on a Michigan book, though. So
yeah, you kind of briefly just mentioned that you have 2 others in the works right now. 2 ideas.
Yeah,
or?
Collective Vengeance is a 3-book series.
That was going to be one of my questions, because in reading the synopsis of the book, I'm like, well, this seems like these characters can move on from here. Do you want to talk about some of your characters, like Samantha and Jack? I found
Samantha and Jack are interesting. So people say, if you want to be a good writer, write about what you know. And Samantha and Jack are, a lot of their characteristics are from my wife and I. Jack's a Capricorn, I am. Samantha's a Scorpio, my wife is. And we've always had a great relationship and everything, and so I blended a lot of things that I knew from us into it. But Samantha's, was an original character that evolved. And I should say that her evolution and the plot, my wife is a collaborator. I would write and I would give her things, and one time she said, "What if Samantha were pregnant?" wow, that threw me for a loop, and then I began to blend it in. But Samantha is a real intelligent businesswoman, made her way up from nothing, has just great instincts, likes to be in charge of things. Jack comes from a background of growing up in Hell's Kitchen, New York, an Irish hoodlum, who became refined, and when he and Samantha meet, they're really challenging each other from the first time they meet, and they end up having a romantic interest, which again was not intended in the book.
Did your wife come up with that one?
Yes, yes. Can you put some romance into it? Yeah. That was an interesting thing to learn as well. So the book has really helped me become a good writer. I've got to thank my wife is my number one editor. I'd give her chapters. I think she's read the book probably 8 or 10 times. But she's a real detailed person. And so when I went to my publisher and their editors got a hold of it, between them and my wife, I've become I want to say a really good writer. And which has been hard over the last 5 years. People have said, "What are you doing?" Well, I'm trying to be a writer.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting, this is really good stuff. When we were in the final phases of editing, and I got stuff from my publisher, and you've got to proof this, that we're getting close, you've got to find your mistakes. And I give it to my wife to help find any remaining little glitches, but then I'd read the book myself, and I had to add some things. And as I read it, I was caught off guard. It was a good book.
Yeah.
Not to give away the book, but there were a couple places where I sat there and I read it, and I leaned back and I had tears in my eyes because some interaction with the characters, and I went, wow, I wrote that. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, they're like your kids. You've watched them grow in your writing. I would assume that's how I would feel about it.
Oh, yeah. And all of the characters, Jack and Samantha. Roy Covington is a Vietnam-era photojournalist who's a mysterious investigator that they get involved with. I tapped him from my Vietnam information. There's a Riley James and a Chandler Yates. He's an attorney from the South who lives in New York. And then, of course, there's... so the pitch, if anybody listens to this, they're going, what's going on? So here's the elevator pitch on the story. It's about a woman who's a successful venture capitalist living in New York City. 27 years prior, when she was 16, she was raped at a fraternity party, became pregnant, and the young man that impregnated her came from a wealthy North Carolina family with strong political influences. They demanded she have an abortion, gave her money, and she ran away. 27 years later, she's in New York, and she hears on a CNN broadcast that the guy who raped her is being nominated for the position of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And it kind of explodes from there. She becomes involved with she hires Jack Gallagher, who is a convicted, pardoned felon. And they develop an interest, and their whole thing is going after this David James, who's the Supreme Court nominee, and the political organization backing him, which I called Aegis, which is a fictitious combination of organizations. But yeah, that's the gist of the story. My publisher calls it a political romantic thriller. And anybody I've given the little elevator pitch to, or they've read my description on the book, the reaction has been, I want to read this book.
I want to read it.
Yeah. And I went through, when I was preparing to go to the publisher, I had 25 readers around the area, people I know that read the book and gave me their input. I would sit down and interview them after they read as I was developing it. And it's going to be interesting. In June, I've got a party for the readers where they're going to get a finished copy of the book and told a lot of things have changed here. There is some more dramatic twist to it. So it's just evolving into a lot of fun.
How does it feel to hand that over to a reader and then wait for their criticism? That, I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, I would be like, oh, I've worked so hard on this, and now I have to listen to you tell me what you don't like or like about it.
Giving it to the readers, and I knew all of them, was tough. It was like giving up your child for adoption, and then sitting and waiting to hear what they say, and, well, you should have done this, and I didn't like this, or this character needs this, and I'm going, oh, Jesus, what is this? But I had to sit down and not have thin skin, and had to read all of it, and then when I turned it over to the professional editors at the publisher, that was the scary part. What are these professional people going to say? And they guided me into doing some things that really polished the book up, But when you turn it over to somebody, you've worked on it for almost 5 years, it's a little scary. What's the result going to be? And it's like baking a cake and you put it in the oven.
Yeah. You
kind of peek in, turn on the light to see how it's doing. And it's a little nerve-wracking, I'll say that.
How does the publishing end work? I mean, do you just take this idea to a publisher? Do you write most of the book and then take it to the publisher and say, hey, would you like to publish this?
Well, the way it worked, now, I'm independently publishing. I'm not well enough known to have somebody pay me for my book, so I've got to pay. And you take a finished manuscript, or when I didn't take it to a publisher till I really felt I had worked with my readers, it filtered through computer programs like Grammarly and a couple other writing programs for all kinds of corrections, grammar and punctuation, which I'm bad at. But then you turn it over to a publisher, and the first thing they do is it's called a line edit, where somebody gives you a written editorial analysis. I think it was 6 pages long.
Wow.
Here's what your book, this is what was happening, this is what I liked. Now these are weak points in it, and this what you need to do. And then they go through and they make grammatical corrections. When I got the first edits back, in 88,000 words, there were over 4,000 corrections.
Misspelled words or just punctuation?
Misspelled words, used the wrong word, punctuation, rephrase this, you need to develop this better. I mean, it ranged all over the board. And then, so we did a second round of those. And the second time it came back, there were only 30 errors that I had to correct. And then it goes on to a copy editor who goes through it again from a different viewpoint. And there were 2 rounds of that. And then it's, okay, it's done. Here it is. They go, here it is. You need to proof this. We're getting to the point that we're not going to change it anymore. And you pay for all that editing service.
Okay. And how long does that typically take? Like, you send them something, how long does it take for it to come back?
when I would first send them, it'd take about 4 weeks to get it back with all this information and analysis. And each time it got a little bit shorter because there was less to correct. At the same time, they refined my cover. My wife came up with the original.
Yeah, I want to talk about the cover. The cover's very cool.
Yeah, well, the voodoo doll with the pins was my wife's original idea. And then the actual design of it, let's go back. About a year and a half ago, I hired somebody to create Joseph Stanley, an identity, because that's the pen name I have. So I write under Joseph Stanley, which is still my real name, because my name is Joseph Stanley Suchocki. But I thought, Suchocki, Suchocki, however you want to take a Polish name apart, it was going to be tough. And Stanley was my dad's name. And I thought, I was a rebellious kid in a rock band, ran away to the military. He and I patched things up pretty good, but he never really got to see me succeed in my business or anything. He died. And I thought, okay, I'm going to use his name. It's still my name. But personally, it was kind of like a recognition to my dad. Hey, I finally made it.
Yeah.
And so that's where it came. But I decided I needed an identity. So I hired this branding person out of Colorado. And she's actually the daughter-in-law of good friends we have in Onekama. And Ellie Brown, branding, she created the color scheme. She took my signature J. Stanley or Joseph Stanley, converted it into a logo, came up with different logo recognitions. She created my initial website, Facebook page, which I have a publicity team working on revamping now because Ellie's about to have a baby. So I've lost her for a while.
I think I know Ellie.
Ellie, you know who she's married to?
I don't know if I know who she's married to, but I think I know her parents, like Jerry Brown.
Yeah, Jerry and Bonnie Brown.
Yeah.
She's married to Ryan
Shout
Brown.
out to Jerry and Bonnie Brown.
Yeah.
I don't know her that well, but her brother's a really good friend of mine. Danny's a really good friend of mine.
Danny worked for you.
Yeah.
I forgot about the connection, but
It just kind of threw me for a loop there.
yeah, it was not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before. Ellie and her husband Ryan were here visiting Jerry and Bonnie, and we were at the Blue Slipper in Onekama, the bar, and she's explained what she does, and I said, hey, have you ever worked with an author? She said, no. And I said, I need to create an identity for me as an author. And so she took the project on. She did phenomenal work. But her and Ryan are expecting their first child in a few weeks. So I've lost her for now. So I've got a publicity group that is handling redoing my website and Facebook page and everything. So, that was a piece that not many people are aware of, but she was phenomenal to work with. And Jerry and Bonnie Brown are great people.
I've known them a long time.
Yeah. Good people. So it's going back to developing characters and stuff. It just kind of keeps growing. The second book is progressing along. And the characters, I still sit and talk with them occasionally during the week. And it might be where I sit down, okay, Jack, this is happening. What do you think we should do here? Or if it's Samantha or Roy or Mansa, which is a different character. And there's one really dark character that evolved in the book late. It's interesting, just sharing with you. When I had readers, one of my readers was a friend who is a psychologist. And when I interviewed him, well, like all readers, I'd say, who are your favorite characters? He said, oh, I really liked this character and this character. And I said, those are the two darkest characters in the book. I said, leave it to a psychologist to like those people. He said, you did a really great job with them. I had another friend who read through the book and said, I'm wondering who Joseph Suchaki is. Some of the stuff you're writing in here, I said, just remember, Stephen King is not a serial killer.
Right.
Neither am I. And some of the characters, it was interesting to hear reactions from people on the characters. You know, it made me feel good that the characters popped out at them.
Yeah. Well, the art. So who made this?
Well, Ellie refined it. It was my wife's idea that collective vengeance is a group of people who have reason for revenge. And she said, early on, she said, how about a voodoo doll with pins in it? And I turned that over to Ellie, and she came up with it.
That's amazing.
And on the book cover, it's hard to see on the bookmark, but it has justice scales in the background, and it's a kind of a dark blue and black cover. And the interesting thing is, like I'm going downstate next week, my publisher has me lining up bookstores regionally here to get my feet wet to carry the book, and they're going to do it nationally. But when I've shown the cover to a bookstore, they go, that's really interesting. And then they read the back cover copy, and it's, okay, yeah, we'll carry your book. This could sell.
The book cover really kind of brings you in initially.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing. When you sent that to me, I'm like, wow, that's a really nice,
Yeah,
that's a really nice cover.
Yeah. So the publisher polished it up, but between my wife and Ellie and then the publisher, we ended up with a great cover. I think it draws interest.
How did you pick the publisher?
Oh, I interviewed several publishers. I came down to two. One of them was a Michigan publisher, and I didn't feel we were a good fit. The person who wrote my editorial analysis, we didn't click. And I had a couple people recommend that my publishers, Palmetto Publishing out of North Charleston, South Carolina. And in talking with them, I felt good, and then I had them do an editorial analysis, and I liked the link. I mean, the editorial analysis was still, here are things you did good, here are things you need to work on, you know, which, yeah, every time somebody did that, it was, oh, God, I thought I was getting it better.
Yeah.
So it was really a feel and a connection, and I've been super pleased with them. They have incredible people down there, and we've done it all remotely, so.
I'm interested to know about like your vision or your goal for this franchise of books. Is there a hope that a publisher starts paying you directly for it, or do you want to stay independent? I don't know how much it costs really, and you know, there's putting all your time and effort and love into this book, but then there's also this financial burden to kind of get them up off the ground.
Yeah, it's a pretty good financial investment, north of $10,000.
Okay.
When you get done with everything. I don't know if, I don't really have aspirations that somebody like Penguin Publishing is going to pick me up as an author. I think I'll be an independent author. Hope to just make enough money to recover my investment. Yeah, it's, I've read the pros and the cons, and when you go to a national publishing house, the traditional publishers, it's a whole nother set of hoops to jump through. You make less money per book, far less. You make more as an independent, but you're fronting the editorial costs, the development of it and everything. I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
So do you have to purchase, like, I don't know how many books, and then take them to the stores, or do you ship them to the store? How does that work?
Okay.
The actual physically selling of your product, whether it's on Amazon or in store.
So the publisher puts it on a service called Ingram Spark,
Okay.
which if you buy my book through Amazon, it's actually going to be funneled through and printed by Ingram Spark. And they'll pay Amazon, and I get a percentage of the sales, whether it's through Kindle or Apple Books, or you buy it on Amazon, or stores outside of this area. We've got press releases going out and newswire services in June. They will order it through this Ingram Spark, okay? Regionally here, I'm doing it myself. Like here, it used to be called Happy Owl.
You've got a book signing that's going to be happening.
And I've
here?
got a book signing there in June. There, Frankfurt, Traverse City, Cadillac, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Okemos, Ann Arbor, Bloomfield Hills. Those are regional stores I'm visiting now to set up, and they're all accepting it. You make more money when you do it that way, so it's on consignment. They'll take 5 to 10 copies, and we have an agreed split on it. And when they sell them, they'll let you know if they need more books, how it's going. They've all been great to work with so far. So different ways it's sold. I should add, one of the most interesting parts of this recently has been we're also it'll be available in print, paperback, ebook, and an audio book. And
Are you reading the audio?
no,
Oh.
the publisher has a talent group of like about 800 readers. And they sent me 6 audition tapes, listened to them, and had 2 of them reread. Only one of them didn't like. So we're getting a couple more and have to make a decision. But it's interesting to sit down, put your headphones on, you're listening to somebody read chapters out of the book, and it's...
I do the majority of my reading audioly. I'll take the book and open it, but I'll have it playing in my ear.
Yeah.
For some reason, I absorb more of it that way.
Well, we debated on the audiobook, and I interviewed a lot of people, and they said more and more people like audio. Younger people like audio. You have a book that will appeal to a lot of people who will read it or listen to it, or they'll read it and then listen to it. So, but it's a whole nother interesting step in the process. Yeah.
One of the other questions I had, aside from the book, was how you got to Onekama.
Okay, so we were living in Dexter, Michigan, outside of Ann Arbor, in a condo, and our plan was about this time. We moved up here 3 years ago, but our original plan was my wife and I were going to move to a retirement community in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Big, 50-acre campus, gorgeous place, where you go there and you start out independent living. You can go to assisted living, to memory care, to nursing care. You don't leave the campus. And that was our plan. Well, our daughter and her husband, about 5 years ago, found an old brick Victorian home here in Manistee that she just loved. Her dream house, she is great at decorating and combining antiques and modern stuff. And they moved up here. So my wife and I thought, well, till we moved to North Carolina, we bought a little studio condo out in Harbor Village. And we were driving up here, and after about 8 trips, my wife said, this is insane. We're too old to be, I'm 78. Now I'm 78. But we're too old to be making this 4.5 hour drive one way. So we began looking, and it was right when COVID was happening, and we couldn't find what we wanted in Manistee, and our realtor, Margie, took us to Onekama. And when we first drove in, my wife looked around, she said, I can't live here. This is too small. This is not what I bargained for. And we found a great home that we were able to gut and remodel and everything, and best thing we ever did. I mean, we discovered, how can I explain this? We were socially active down in Dexter and Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived there 40 years. My wife grew up there. And we had a pretty good social network. In Onekama, this little village of 400 people, which that's just the village, but our social network went from this size to this size. And everybody up here is so friendly, so outgoing. What we're really impressed with is nobody has a chip on their shoulder or anything to prove. Everybody's been there, done it. I mean, if you live in Onekama, you essentially live in a retirement community. It's a retirement resort community. Sure. And we've become very involved there. You know, as we speak, 2 years ago, I founded a group called Onekama Collaborative Recovery.
That's in my notes. I wanted to bring that up. So
and it was driven by an article in the Advocate, a letter to the editor that Onekama's in a death spiral. And I was going, this can't happen. This is a neat community. I don't want to let it happen. So I got a group of 5 other individuals together, and we came up with ideas of our little OCR group, we call it, is about trying to enhance the Onekama area to be better. And we looked, what could we do? Because everybody told me, don't try to do anything in Onekama because they won't let it happen. Nothing ever happens, nothing ever improves. And we picked the Village Park. We have Monday concerts there all summer long. And the bands had to perform on, I called it a ping pong table. It was about an 8x10 stage that was temporary up on maybe 10-inch little pegs in the ground. And they didn't have enough room, and having been in a band, it's not something you'd want to stand on. And so I thought, let's build a new event stage, which is nearing completion there this year. So we raised about $100,000. So it was totally funded without costing the village anything. We got it done. And our next phase is next year, we're going to take the main picnic pavilion, which is really big. The event stage is, I think it's 12 or 16 by 24, so it's much bigger.
It's big.
And it's a structure that, if you go see it, has this Gothic arch theme made by a company down in West Olive, Michigan, that makes structures for parks all over the country. So we're going to take that design and next year replace the 45-foot long main pavilion with the same design. And the park is just going to have a really neat look to it. And our whole concept was, if we can start to make something very visible, positive happen, that there are investors who would like to do something there. They're going to say, well, wait, maybe something can happen in Onekama, and we're getting a lot of positive feedback. So
I've been trying to build like something similar to that, but on a much, much larger scale here in Manistee. And it seems like it's almost too big. It's taking too long to get to the point where they can break ground on it.
Sure.
I think it actually started to be something the size of what you've done in Onekama, and now it's like a $2 million project. But
wow,
we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see if it gets going.
Yeah, but it's the Manistee Onekama area is just a golden gem. You know, it's a great place to live. I'm sad that in the winter most of the community disappears. They go south.
It definitely gets a lot quieter in the winter.
Oh, it does. But you know what? The winters aren't that bad up here.
Not
I
anymore.
I know they could be,
Yeah.
but not anymore, no.
Yeah, I grew up here. I mean, the winters have been very, very mild the last 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, last year was nothing.
Yeah. It was, in a blink of an eye, it was over.
Yeah. I caused it last year. In December, I told my wife, my Jeep Wrangler I said, the all-weather tires don't really work well on this Jeep in snow. I need to get snow tires. And I said, okay, $1,000 for snow tires. If I buy them, there'll be no snow. But
That's
if
right.
I don't, we're going to get killed.
Yeah.
Well, I bought snow tires, so we didn't have much snow.
It's like putting your snowblower away.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it snows.
Oh, yeah.
You know. Trying to think if there was, your background, to go back to the beginning, because I did want to talk more about the quest a little bit.
Sure.
In Vietnam. So what, if you had 3 records make the top 10, what was it? Vietnam that basically it was time for the band to just
Yeah.
to go away? Because that sounds. Did you have a record deal?
No, we were close to a record deal, and it didn't materialize because the band was breaking up. The band did go on after I went to Vietnam. I ended up in the military because playing in the band and playing bars at night and getting good grades in college didn't match.
Sure.
So I was going to get drafted, so I volunteered. And our drummer did as well. And the band went on for a couple more years playing locally. But the records we had were really great. We were even on TV. At that time in Grand Rapids, they had I think it was WZZM TV. They had a version of American Bandstand done locally. It was called the Dick McKay Show. And we were on there 2 or 3 times, which gave us a lot of notoriety. And we played the colleges in the area, high school dances, traveled around the state playing fraternity parties and stuff. And it was great fun, you know. None of us could read music. We knew how to play. We could master mimicking or covering a song really well. So it was, it was a great time. I did not find any downside to it. But it was the military in Vietnam that kind of broke the band up. And then 3 of our band members maintained good enough grades. They went on to get their degrees, avoid getting drafted or anything. So, and back in, I think it was for our 50th reunion, the band got back together and played at our high school reunion.
Nice.
And they made another record. I didn't participate in that one. But it was, the quest was just a neat experience.
So then you leave and go into the Army, and I served as well in the Air Force. And
Thanks for your service.
Appreciate yours, especially yours. Sometimes it's a difficult topic to get into with somebody, regardless of what era they were in the military. But I do have genuine interest in knowing what your experience was really like in the jungle.
Let's see.
I mean, you were working hand in hand, and I mean, you briefly touched on it at the beginning of the podcast, but I mean, I'd be interested to know if you can remember, the sounds, the smells, the feelings.
Oh yeah, having been there 2 years, so it was. When I got out of officers candidate school, I went to artillery OCS, which meant I came out as a forward observer. Life expectancy in Vietnam was under 6 months.
Yeah.
So I volunteered for language school and was brought into what's called, I mentioned, the Military Advisory Command. So I learned Vietnamese, which was an interesting concept. When I landed in Vietnam, and I landed 2 days before the Tet Offensive and then got shipped south, I thought, okay, I'm going to live in this Vietnamese village. I'll be able to cope. I'm going to work with the Vietnamese. Well, it would have been like you learning English in New Jersey and getting stationed in Louisiana.
Sure.
Yeah. Like, oh, my God. But I adapted to it. They were great people. I can, going to market, used to go into the village, get my hair cut every 2 weeks, buzz cut, and they'd scrape your ears out with little razors and stuff. I mean, the sights and sounds, I still remember. I took a lot of Kodachrome slides.
Okay.
And they've survived. And my daughter put them all together, my granddaughter put them all together in a collection for me, which is kind of interesting to go back and see. Probably the things that I didn't like were like in getting caught in combat. Nighttime was scary if you were caught in a crossfire and stuff. When I came back from Vietnam and realized this was in the era when you came back, you were not liked.
Right.
So when I got debriefed, the officer I had in California said, look, you're going to stay in right now, which I had planned to. Talk to everybody you can who's willing to listen about all your experiences. If you don't, it's going to cause you problems. So because I stayed in the military another year and a half, I really got to talk to a lot of people, commiserate with people who had been there, and it helped me a lot. I was fortunate. I came back in one piece. I didn't have mental problems or drug problems or anything. And I try not to talk about it unless somebody asks me about it.
I understand.
Okay. How can I say? I'm a quiet veteran. I don't wear a Vietnam hat or a badge or anything. If somebody thanks me for my service, I wrote it in my bio in my book, I'm willing to say thank you, but to me it was like, it was no big deal. I mean, I grew up in the era, my dad was in the Second World War, and it was just, military was an accepted thing. The country was at war. Okay, I volunteered, but it is what it is, and I enjoyed the military. I wish I would have stayed in instead of getting out, but my first wife didn't like the military. Hindsight, I should have divorced her, not the military. But things that left good imprints on me in my life: playing in a band, being in the military, and then having my own business. Those are the big impacts of my life, and they all helped the next step along.
Right.
But as far as Vietnam goes, I've had people say, would you ever like to go back? No. It's kind of like my wife and I have a theory. We've been to many beautiful places on vacation, and we've often thought, one of our best vacations was in the Bahamas, and we thought we should go back there, and it's like, no, because it won't be the same.
Right.
It's going to be different, and it will probably disappoint. So I've never wanted to go back to Vietnam, but I can vividly recall it, and the people I worked with and everything. It gets imprinted on you pretty strongly.
Yeah, when you sent me your bio and I read that piece about being in the military and going to Vietnam, I thought, well, there's probably a book there.
There could be. Never thought of that.
And see, that for me, that was like, you got to have a book about Vietnam.
But there have been so many.
Sure.
There's a great one you should read called Things I Carried. It's about a Vietnam soldier. My wife read it, and I've read parts of it, about this soldier in Vietnam and the things he carried on his person when he was serving. So I don't know if I could write a book about it. It's kind of a lot of personal stuff. So I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of working on a Michigan-based book. I've got a group of friends in Onekama who are sailing enthusiasts. And one night we're at the Blue Slipper drinking, and they're telling me about this boat, Measure for Measure.
Okay.
I went, wow. It's the only sailboat that was on the Great Lakes that the Coast Guard recorded sank twice. It was built in New Zealand out of special New Zealand wood, sailed across the world, did races off of California, got trucked to the Great Lakes. Out of Chicago, used to race the Chicago to Mackinac race. That's where it sank twice. It is now a reclaimed wreck in a yard in Onekama, Michigan.
No kidding.
And when they were talking about this, I sat back and I thought, Measure for Measure. And then I found out that's the title of a Shakespeare play. But as they were talking about it, I said, there's a book in this. And so I'm getting together with them. I think it's in July. They've got a bunch of people who sailed on this boat.
Okay.
And I'm going to begin to do interviews and record them. And I said, if you guys can give me all the background and the sailing information, how about a book called Measure for Measure, but it's the story told by the sailboat. And I'm kind of excited about that because the next two books in my Vengeance series are about vengeance, and I thought, well, here's something totally different to do. And I can't say that's a unique concept. Are you a dog lover?
I like animals. I don't have a dog, but yeah.
Okay. If you ever want to read a book, and it's also a movie that will bring you to tears, but it's called The Art of Racing in the Rain.
Okay.
And it's about a dog, and it's told by the dog. And I think in the movie, the dog's voice is Costner.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And it is just a phenomenal book. But when they were telling me about this sailboat, I thought, this fits that kind of concept. So we'll see if that evolves into a project. If we have enough beers, I can get them to talk enough. I'm not a sailing enthusiast, but if I get the right information, maybe we can collaborate and create something that'll just be fun. It'll be fun for the area.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Well, good deal, Joe. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming in and sitting down. So the book is called Collective Vengeance, and let everybody know where your social links are, where they can find you, and where they can get the book when it is ready to go.
Yeah, it'll be available the end of June. June 15th is the official publication date. It'll be available on Amazon, but be available in local bookstores and some local non-bookstores that are willing to sell it. As far as my website is stanleywrites.com.
You can find him on Facebook at Joseph Stanley Author.
Yeah.
That's where I got a lot of the information from, too. The website is very nice, by the way. So.
Yeah, they're going to convert it now. It's going to become book-centric.
Okay.
So it's going to have a collective vengeance strong theme to it,
Nice.
which is going to be exciting. And they're creating some trailers for it. So
I can't wait to read it because to me it sounds like it could be a movie. It could be a part 1, part 2, part 3. So
I don't know.
wouldn't that be something?
It would be. I'm just happy to get it out.
Yeah.
I feel people say, wow, you really did something. I'm going, wow, I really did, because I recall in high school sweating bullets to write a 100 or 200 word
Yeah.
essay, and this is 88,000 words.
Wild.
It's wow, that's a lot. So
We'll put all of the links in the copy of this podcast, so everybody will be able to just click and go. I'll put your bio in there, so everybody will get that information up front. And yeah, we're excited. We're excited to see the book. And
send me the link to the podcast,
I will.
and I'll put it up on my stuff, and hopefully people like Jerry and Bonnie Brown enjoy it and not cringe that I used them.
I'm going to send them. I'm going to clip that one part out and send it to them for sure. Thanks a lot,
thank you.
brother.
Hey.
Awesome. Thank you.